Welcome to Resume Writing Part 2. This presentation is for anyone who already has a resume but needs to add some finishing touches. At this point, we're going to assume that you already have a draft of your resume together. As a refresher, all resumes need to include contact information, education, and a work history. Depending on your background, it may also include volunteer experience, campus involvement, skills, coursework, exhibitions, performances, awards. Before we go into polishing it up, make sure everything is up to date and current and that your resume has all of your more recent accomplishments. What we want to do at this point is make sure that your resume reflects your strengths. We want to make sure that it's future focused, that it reflects what you're interested in doing and not just what you've done. We want to highlight relevant experience, and we want to start to focus on demonstrating your unique value. This is really what good resume writing and job searching overall comes down to, is demonstrating to somebody why you are worth hiring. Here's where it becomes really important to think about your contribution. What makes you worth hiring? Consider what defines your work style, what you're proudest of, and what makes you different from everyone else. The hope is that at this point you can at least start to brainstorm a general value, a general idea of what your worth is, and this will help guide us as we revise your resume. Before we go any further, let's stop for a second. Let's do a quick assessment. So either right now, if you've got a copy with you, or after this presentation, take a look at the first half of your resume. Either fold it in half or zoom in so all you can see is 50%. What are you seeing? Is all of it relevant to what you want to do? Is any of it relevant to what you want to do? If the picture you're painting is one of a student, a server, a salesperson, or anything other than the job you are applying to right now, we need to take a minute to refocus. We test the first half because this is where impressions are formed. If I don't immediately see your career-related skills, it's going to be hard to convince me to bring you in for an interview. So what do we do if your resume is only telling us about your past and not your future? Luckily, there's a lot. It all comes down to proving it. Start by thinking about what you do well. We talked a little bit about those selling points earlier on. Well, how do I know you can do these things? How do I know you're a good communicator, that you have strong technical skills, that you're an excellent problem solver? It all comes down to proof. Sometimes the proof is in your internship experiences. Other times it's classes, class projects. It may be from performances, volunteer work. What we're deciding here is, first of all, what goes in your resume, the order in which it's presented, and finally how you describe it. So let's make this a little bit more concrete by looking at an example. I'm going to show a few management resumes because these tend to be very content driven. But these concepts apply regardless of what you want to do. Try to picture your experience as we go through, and you can also see several other examples on our website at colum.edu/careers. So let's take a look at the what first. We want to make sure that you haven't left anything out first and foremost. So make sure that you know the expectations in your industry and include all of the necessary information. Once all of your experience is on the resume, if you're over a page, it's time to make some cuts. There are very few exceptions to the one-page resume rule. So first, cut out anything that is the least related, shortest term, or longest ago. So looking at our first example, this is a student interested in event planning. If I use the first half test, I see the objective, which does tell me that the student is interested in event planning. I see education, and I see a retail job. Now, this is not a bad resume, but I probably wouldn't be compelled to interview this student for a full-time job. So what this really starts to get down to is the order of information presented, which is critical. Here's an updated version of the same resume. There are a couple of differences here. First and foremost, a summary section can be a good alternative to an objective because it's focused on functions, skills, competencies, rather than what you in particular are looking for. Done well, these will sum up your unique value and set the tone for the rest of the resume. The other difference here is an event planning experience section. Now, it's a great idea to separate resume content by sections because it allows you to control when experiences are seen. Chronologically, your most recent job may have been retail, but this is definitely the most related position. So an experience section can include internships, volunteer experiences, and jobs all together. Then we still include the formal jobs, but this is in an other experience section. So to sum up, the top half of your resume should relate directly to the work you want to do. Overall, about 70 to 80% of your resume content should relate directly, and the rest can include experiences that help prove that you have a strong work ethic, a diverse skill set, and an interesting story. So one of the final things that helps demonstrate your value is your word choice. You'll need to describe your past jobs, so be sure that you do so in ways that do justice to your contribution. Let's go back to our first sample. Look at the internship description here. It's very nuts and bolts, basic and brief. When you look at the language, it's very passive. Worked, assisted, responsible for. You don't get a very clear picture of what the student really contributed. By contrast, let's look at this revised description. Worked with volunteers becomes oversaw a team of 10 volunteers. Overall, the language is much more specific and active, and this is what we want to aim for: detail, specificity, and ownership. I'm less interested in what your responsibilities were than what your contribution to the job was. Once your content is polished up, it's time to think about formatting. Try to avoid resume templates, which at best are inflexible and at worst are unoriginal. Aim for something neat, clean, and professional. Ideally, create something unique. You're doing creative work, so you can get away with a more dynamic format than an accountant. That said, be sure it's audience appropriate. So if you're in a visual field, design, art direction, photography, your resume should be designed to uniquely fit your brand. If you know you're applying somewhere more formal and conservative, you generally want to take fewer risks with the resume format. And of course, don't stop there. Once the resume is done, well-designed, well-written, proofread, make sure that you take time to draft cover letters as well. These are an inseparable part of the application process. Think about getting your resume online as well. Print business cards, connect with social media. Again, we're recognizing that resumes have limitations and they're going to be more effective if they're part of a very strategic job search. Finally, don't forget that Career Initiatives is here to help. We have resume walk-ins every Tuesday from 3 to 5 and Wednesday from 12 to 2 in 623 South Wabash, room 307. It's a good idea to get at least 2 sets of eyes on your resume to make sure it's having the impact that it's supposed to.